academic communication skills for the course for the Diploma in Junior Primary Education. I'm your tutor, Rita Davids. A hearty welcome to you all. Welcome to the study of English and Academic Communication Skills, Year 1, Semester 2. This is Module 2, studied in the second semester. The module will consolidate your knowledge of all aspects of the teaching of English as a second language. Time required. The module carries 12 credits, which will take roughly 120 hours, about 30 hours per unit of study to complete. The assignment is meant to prepare you for the examination, so it is very important. Exit learning outcomes. Upon completion of this module, students should be able to describe and practice linguistic constructs, analyze and demonstrate how to write different types of writing, clarify and apply academic writing conventions, demonstrate the use of the APA referencing system in texts and reference lists. Study support available. There is no prescribed book for this module. The study guide is the only guide which will take you through the study material. Module assessment and quality assurance. On page 9, you will find all the information about the marks, the credits, and final pass mark. Assignment. The assignment for 2016 consists out of 4 questions with subsections. Please make sure that you answer all questions. There are no optional questions. Answers must be numbered in the same order as the given questions. You are expected to type or write on one side of the page to make marking easier. Staple separate pages of the assignment in the left top corner. Clearly number the questions and subsections. Number the pages. Write the title of the assignment on the cover page. Do not staple assignments for different subjects together. Follow all the instructions for assignments carefully. Very important, the due date for your assignment is either the 15th of January or the 15th of June 2016. Learning outcome and content of this module. This module is divided into 4 units. Unit 1 is about the linguistic constructs. The learning outcomes are on page 18. There are 17 learning activities in this unit. Unit 2 are the different types of writing. The learning outcomes are on page 243. There are 13 learning activities in this unit. Unit 3 is about academic writing conventions. Learning outcomes are on page 414. There are 6 learning activities in this unit. Unit 4, the use of the APA referencing system. The learning outcomes are on page 540. There are 3 learning activities in this unit. The answers to all the learning activities are found at the back of the module. Unit 1, verbs, nouns, and concord. The shortest sentence contains a verb. You can make a one-word sentence with a verb. For example, stop. You cannot make a one-word sentence with any other type of word. Verbs are sometimes described as action words. This is partly true. Many verbs give the idea of action or doing something. For example, words like run, fight, do, and work all imply action. But some verbs do not give the idea of action. They give the idea of existence or state of being. For example, verbs like be, exist, seem, and belong all convey state. There is something very special about verbs in English. Most other words, like adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, etc., do not change in form, although nouns can have singular and plural forms, but almost all verbs change in form. What is a verb? Verb classification. We divide verbs into 2 broad classifications, finite verbs and auxiliary or helping verbs. the finite verbs. These verbs are main verbs and have meaning on their own. They tell us something. We can distinguish a finite verb as follows. The finite verb can function on its own without the help of an auxiliary verb. The auxiliary or the helping verbs, these are auxiliary verbs and have no meaning on their own. They are necessary for the grammatical structure of the sentence, but they do not tell us very much more. We usually use helping verbs with main verbs. We can distinguish an auxiliary verb as follows. An auxiliary verb is a helping verb. It always precedes the verb in the sentence. For example, I have done that already. Examples of auxiliary verbs: am, are, be, is, can, could, has, have, had, may, might, must, shall, will, should, would. Verb forms. Regular verbs. A regular verb is a verb which does not change its form for the past tense or as a past participle. Regular verb lists, you will find the list on page 28 to 32. Irregular verbs. An irregular verb takes a different form as the past tense and past participle. Sometimes the past tense and the past participle are the same form. The irregular verb list you will find on page 33 to 36. Nouns. A noun is a name of a person, place, thing, or idea. Whatever exists, we assume can be named, and that name is a noun. A proper name, which names a specific person, place, or thing. For example, Carlos, Queen Margaret, Middle East, Jerusalem, etc. And it is almost always capitalized. Common nouns name everything else that usually are not, and that is usually not capitalized. Categories of nouns. Nouns can be classified further as count nouns, which names everything that can be counted: 4 books, 2 continents, a few dishes. Or mass nouns, or you can also say non-count nouns, which name something that cannot be counted, like water, air, energy, blood. And you get collective nouns, which can take a singular form but are composed of more than one individual person or item, like jury, team, class, committee, herd. Different types of nouns. These you will find on page 39 to 42. Concord, subject, verb, agreement. There are 20 rules of subject-verb agreement. Most of the concepts of the subject-verb agreement are straightforward, yet some aspects of singular and plural usage in English grammar are more complicated. You will find the rules on page 43 to 46. Prefixes and suffixes. Affixes. An affix is added to the root of a word to change its meaning. An affix added to the front of the word is known as a prefix. One added to the back is known as a suffix. Sometimes prefixes are hyphenated. A prefix is a letter or a group of letters attached to the beginning of the word that partly indicates its meaning. For example, the word prefix itself begins with a prefix which is pre, which generally means before. Suffixes. A suffix is a letter or a group of letters that is usually attached to the end of a word to form a new word, as well as alter the way it functions grammatically. List of common prefixes and suffixes. You will find the list on page 59 to 85. Sentence analysis. Consider the following example. He is laughing at a joker. The above sentence has 2 parts. He is laughing and at a joker. The first part of the sentence, he is laughing, is a clause because it has a subject, he, and a predicate, is laughing. The second part of the sentence, at a joker, is a phrase because it does not contain subject and verb. Phrases. A phrase is defined as a group of related words. A phrase is a part of a sentence. It is a group of words within a sentence that does not contain both subject and verb and does not express a complete idea. Types of phrases. You will find different types of phrases on page 86 to 91. Clauses. A clause refers to a group of related words within a sentence or itself as an independent sentence, which has both subject and predicate. Types of clauses. There are two major types of clauses: main or independent clause and subordinate or dependent clause. Types of subordinate clauses. A subordinate or dependent clause may function as a noun, an adjective, or an adverb in sentences. On the basis of their function in a sentence, subordinate clauses can be divided into noun clauses, adjective clauses, and adverb clauses. Restrictive and non-restrictive clauses. Adjective or relative clauses can be restrictive clauses or non-restrictive clauses. Tenses. The correct use of tense in the English language is one of the biggest problems of non-native language speakers. Namibians notoriously have problems with using tenses correctly as well as with the correct pronunciation of English words. There are 12 tenses in the English language. The following are some of the tenses. The simple present refers to an action which is taking place at present, today, this week, this month, this year, etc. The simple past refers to an action which took place at some time which is already past. For example, earlier today, yesterday, last week, last month, last year, etc. The simple future refers to an action which still has to take place. For example, later today, tonight, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, etc. The continuous tense for each of these three simple tenses refers to something which is ongoing or continuing at the time referred to. The perfect tenses refer to actions which have been completed at the time referred to. The perfect continuous tenses refer to actions which were in the process of being completed at a time in the past. You will find the 12 verb tenses on page 101 to 107. Figurative and literal use of language. Figurative language. This can be found in literature and poetry, where the writing appeals to the senses. Types of figurative language. There are many types of figurative language. Some include the use of a specific type of word or word meaning, such as a simile, a metaphor, personification, hyperbole, or symbolism. Figurative language can also include unusual constructions or combinations of words that give a new perspective on the word, such as alliteration or idiom. You will find an explanation of each type of figurative language, each with an example of figurative language on page 111 to 192. Direct and indirect speech. Direct speech. That means saying exactly what someone has said, and that is called direct speech, sometimes called quoted speech. Here, what a person says appears within quotation marks and should be word for word. Indirect or reported speech. Indirect speech or reported speech does not use quotation marks to enclose what the person said, and it does not have to be word for word. The tense usually changes. This is because when we use reported speech, we are usually talking about a time in the past. The verbs, therefore, usually have to be in the past too. Voice, active voice. A verb is said to be in active voice when the subject performs the verb. Passive voice. A verb is said to be in the passive voice when its subject does not perform the action of the verb. In fact, the action is performed on the subject. Examples of active and passive voice can be found on page 221 to 222. Modality and conditional language. Modality. Modals, also called modal verbs, modal auxiliary verbs, modal auxiliaries, are special verbs which behave irregularly in English. They are different from normal verbs like work, play, visit. They give additional information about the function of the main verb that follows it. They have a great variety of communicative functions. Examples can be found on page 224 to 233. Conditional language. Conditional language is the use of subordinate clauses to express a condition to which the action referred to is subject. If something is subject to a condition, then it means that something else must happen first before something else can take place. Unit 2. Language errors. Definite and indefinite articles, that is the a, and an. Knowing when to use definite and indefinite articles can be difficult. On page 246 are some of the most important rules to remember when using definite and indefinite articles. Capitalization. I and national adjectives, nouns, names of languages, and the first word of a new sentence are capitalized. The rules of capitalization in English are confusing. Remember these rules to help you avoid this type of capitalization mistake. Capitalize nations, national nouns, and adjectives like French, Russian, English, Italy, Canadian, etc. Capitalize the first letter of the first word in a new sentence or question. Do not capitalize common nouns. Nouns are only capitalized if they are the names of something. Capitalize proper names of people, institutions, festivals, etc. Slang and texting language. Many English learners, especially young English learners, like to use slang and texting language online. Using this sort of idiomatic language can lead to many mistakes. Slang is used in spoken English, not in written communication. Use of punctuation. English learners sometimes have problems when placing punctuation marks. The rule is simple. Place a punctuation mark immediately after the first letter of a word followed by a space. Common mistakes in English. Here are the top 3 common mistakes in English that are often found in writing. It's or its. The first it's means it is. For example, it's raining today. The second it's is the possessive form. For example, it's her book. Remember, when you see an apostrophe, there is a missing verb. Then or than. Than is used in the comparative form. It's bigger than my house. Then is used as a time expression. First you do this, then you do that. Good and well. Good is the adjective form. For example, that's a good story. Well is the adverb form. He plays tennis well. 20 common grammar mistakes that almost everyone makes can be found on page 252 to 257. Sentences and paragraphs. The secrets to good paragraph writing. Paragraph writing is the foundation of all essay writing. Whether the form is expository, persuasive, narrative, or creative. The 4 elements essential to good paragraph writing are unity, order, coherence, and completeness. Basic paragraph structure. In many languages, the fundamental unit of composition is the paragraph. A paragraph consists of several sentences that are grouped together, which discusses one main subject. In the United States, formal academic English paragraphs have three principal parts. These three principal parts are the topic sentence, body sentences, and the concluding sentence. Structure and style of letters. Personal or friendly letters. A friendly or personal letter has 5 main parts: heading, greeting, body, closing, signature. Read more about each part on page 273. Official letters. In English, there are a number of conventions that should be used when writing a formal or business letter. Furthermore, try to write as simple and clearly as possible and not to make a letter longer than necessary. Remember not to use informal language like contractions. Covering letters. Covering letters are the first chance you have to impress your employer. They are not just a protective jacket for your CV. The first thing a potential employer sees in your job application is the cover letter. This does not support your CV. It is an opportunity for you to stand out from the crowd and persuade the recruiter to put you through to the next round. Letter of application. The illustration on page 285 is deemed enough to explain what is expected of you when writing a letter of application. Please note that many of the aspects discussed under business letters and covering letters are applicable to the letter of application as well. Curriculum vitae. Your CV and covering letter is your chance to show an employer the best of what you have got. It is about selling your skills and experience and showing them you are the right person for the job. There are some basic rules to follow if you want to create the best impression. Punctuation and apostrophe use in text. Punctuation marks are essential when you are writing. They show the reader where sentences start and finish, and if they are used properly, they make your writing easy to understand. Types of punctuation. On page 296 to 302, you get the different types of punctuation. Rules for the use of the apostrophe can be found on page 303 to 308. English spelling rules. While spelling used to be taught via simple memorization, experts now believe that understanding key spelling rules is the best way to master new words. Rules help you learn new spelling words in several different ways. The difference between British and American spelling. I think it is important that you pay some attention to the aspects of British and American spelling, as this is one of the areas where we often err in writing English. Namibia uses the British English spelling rules. 100 most misspelled words in English can be found on page 333 to 343. Plan and write good essays. The illustration on page 345 explains how a writer can compose a piece of writing, whether an essay or a novel or some other writing. It is important that the teacher understands this process well, because you will always have to use this knowledge. The writing process is often divided into 5 stages: pre-writing, drafting, revising, proofreading, and publishing. Writing a novel. Writing a novel is easy. Writing a good novel is hard. The best one for you is the one that works for you. The snowflake method. This method is a very popular method. Follow the 10 steps of design from page 353 to 359. How visual literacy can benefit writing. As infants, we learn to read images months before we became verbal, and years before we attempt to become fluent in written language. So we need to learn to identify, read, and understand images to become literate in visual language. That is why we need to understand the use of mind maps, timelines, photographs, videos, logos, etc. Writing interdepartmental memos, business memos. The scope of a memo must include enough information for the reader to understand exactly what the instructions are, who issued them, and when, where, and why they are to be acted upon. Etiquette for writing emails and SMSs. Email etiquette. To ensure that you become an urban and effective user of email, some essential rules for email etiquette has to be followed. Study this on page 378 to 385. SMS etiquette. Speed plus convenience makes texting the go-to option for on-the-go conversation. While a text message may be more casual than a phone call or an email, texting whatever, whenever, to whomever has consequences. There are 7 do's and don'ts that are definitely worth keeping in mind. Minutes and progress reports. Minutes. Whether you have been tasked with taking notes for a committee or you have been appointed secretary to the board of your organization, preparing meeting minutes does not have to be an arduous task. There are some tips and ideas that will help you get started with writing and preparing effective meeting minutes. Progress reports. Progress reports are common and critical documents in science and engineering. Typically, when they are part of a research team, reporting to a funding agency about your progress on work you are doing for that agency. Professionalism of the progress report is often vital to the future of the project. Editing your own and peer writing. Editing your own writing. You should proofread your paper to edit mistakes such as spelling errors, punctuation mistakes, common word mix-ups, and other mechanical problems. While the editing process targets grammar problems, the revision process should focus on readability, logic, and clarity. Editing peer work. Read through a group member's essay in order to get a general idea of the writing. The paper does not have to convince you of a particular viewpoint, but it should be a thoughtful, coherent piece of writing that you can readily understand. Unit 3, Academic Literacy. What is academic literacy? On page 416, you will find an illustration that gives an indication of what academic literacy is. There you will find reading and study skills, reflective skills, thinking skills, communication skills. Paragraphs which aim to entertain, inform, or persuade. What is writing for a purpose? When we think of writers, we normally think of those who craft creative fiction, like short stories, poems, novels, maybe even dramas or screenplays. One key to successful writing, however, is the ability to write in multiple forms and for a variety of purposes. Academic writing genres. Students are asked to write many different kinds of texts, depending on your subject. These could be essays, laboratory reports, case studies, book reviews, reflective diaries, posters, research proposals, and so on, and are normally referred to as genre families or genres. Communicative purpose and audience of each of the 11 academic genres. Invention, technique for preparing to write an essay, purpose, audience, structure, genres in academic writing are on page 428 to 453 and are the following. Essays, reports, case studies, research proposals, book reports, brief reports, literature reviews, reflective writing, writing instructions, research reports. Factors that determine academic writing style. What makes writing academic? On page 477, you will read about what makes writing academic. Features of academic writing. Academic writing in English is linear, which means it has one central point or theme, with every part contributing to the main line of argument, without the digressions or repetitions. Its objective is to inform rather than entertain. Guidelines for writing summaries of text. How to write a summary. A standalone summary is a summary produced to show a teacher that you have read and understood something. A summary in 8 easy steps. By following the easy 8-step method, you will be able to summarize text quickly and successfully for any class or subject. How mind maps and diagrams can be used to plan and analyze the structure of written ideas. Mind map. A mind map is basically a diagram of a summary that connects information around a central subject or topic. Diagrams. Creative diagrams and shapes can make English language learning more fun and interesting. Integration of academic sources. Summary. When you summarize, you collect the major points of the passage, section, article, or book and present them in your own words. The synthesis. Synthesis is a form of summarizing that combines several sources. Paraphrase. Paraphrases are similar to summaries in that they use your own words. However, paraphrases focus on a small part of text, while summaries focus on a large portion. Quote. Quoting sources is perfectly acceptable in papers. However, your paper should not be filled with quotations. General hints on effective academic writing. Planning and organizing. This can be done by understanding the assignment, organizing your paper, and have logical ways of organizing ideas. Features of an academic written assignment. Structure of a research paper. It will help find information you are looking for easily and also help structure your thoughts and communication. Writing an eye-catching academic research paper. A great research paper often starts with a good topic, yet there are other elements necessary to make the paper stand out. Students can learn about these aspects through studying sample research papers and paying close attention to the guidelines given by the instructor. Hypothetical example of research paper. This is a study based on an experiment where you get results and have to have a discussion or conclusion about it. Features of a given academic article. Research paper example. A research paper has to have 6 important elements. You are expected to be able to identify the 6 elements named here. Abstract, introduction, methodology, results, discussion, and references. Critical questions when evaluating an academic test. When an academic test or article is evaluated, one would want to establish whether all the necessary elements of such an article are present and well represented and described. Unit 4. The concept plagiarism. What is plagiarism? Many people think of plagiarism as copying another's work or borrowing someone else's original ideas, but terms like copying and borrowing can disguise the seriousness of the offense. On page 541, you can study what plagiarism means. 6 ways to avoid plagiarism. Use the simple steps on page 544 to 545 to ensure that your work will be free of plagiarism. There you can use paraphrase, cite, quote cites, cite your own material or reference. General rules of the APA citations in the text. Capitals, quotations, paraphrasing. What is APA format? APA format is the official style of the American Psychological Association and is commonly used to cite sources in psychology, education, and the social sciences. APA Style Guide. General rules of the APA Reference Guide. This guide on page 549 to 551 will be very useful to follow. Reference list basic rules. The basic rules can be studied on page 553. Guidelines for citations or types of print materials. There are a number of different styles and conventions which are widely used. Guidelines for citations of electronic sources. Harvard referencing for electronic sources. Electronic sources include websites, emails, films, television programs, podcasts, and radio broadcasts, online journals, and e-books. How do I cite them? The Harvard system requires two elements: in-site citations through your assignment and a list of references at the end. Study the 21 ways of electronic referencing sources on page 557 to 570. Questions and answers troubleshooting. On page 571 to 574, you will find answers to some of your questions when using citations or electronic sources. The adapted Harvard referencing technique. Collecting all the details, accurate referencing. In order to have an accurate record of what you have researched and therefore an accurate reference, it is important that you write down the details of your sources as you study. APA referencing rules and techniques. Here you find rules and examples how to reference the following: books, brochures, conferences, journals, newspapers, audio-visual items, internet sources. General remarks on the answering of your assignment. You are now on the verge of becoming professionals. As a profession person, you must make sure that the assignment you hand in has the appearance of a professional document. You cannot hand in an assignment written on a piece of paper that was torn out of a scribbler. Make sure that the paper you write on is neatly cut and without any grease marks. Try to use your best handwriting and do not draw lines through or use Tipp-Ex on the words that you first misspelled or you decided not to use. A good idea is to first write your assignment on an odd paper and decide how you want to do it. Then rewrite it on a neat paper in your best handwriting. Write only on one side of your paper. If you type your assignment, please read through it very carefully before you print it. Some computers have an automatic spell check and sometimes changes words automatically. This is very important, especially for the language structure questions. Start each question by writing question 1 and underline it before starting to answer it. That always helps you not to get confused with the different questions and is a good way to help you not to misread the question and give the wrong answer. Draw a line underneath each question and start the next question as was described above. To the student, if you have a question you would like to ask me, it is best to mail it to me at omarita51@yahoo.com and I can give you a well-constructed answer. Good luck and all the best for your course. Rita Davids.